Nosferatu has always lurked in Dracula's shadow. After all, Dracula is one of the most iconic villains of all of fiction, with countless adaptations, parodies, cartoons, a breakfast cereal. Vampires, in general, are massively popular. They're seen in all forms of media, and Dracula is smack dab right there in the middle of it all. So, who again is Nosferatu? Well, he's Dracula. Just another adaptation in a sea of Dracula media. But Nosferatu released in 1922, 9 years before the Universal Monster Classic. But Nosferatu was largely forgotten, because over the past 100 years, there have only been a small handful of movies made. But now, with the newest one from Robert Eggers, for maybe the first time in a century, Nosferatu has fully stolen the spotlight. And for a lot of people, this is the very first time they've ever heard the name, at least outside of SpongeBob, or a handful of movie references. And if you're like me, with the release of this new movie, you now have a perfect excuse to finally visit the original. There's no denying its impact on cinema and pop culture, but is Nosferatu still worth digging up today? I think it all comes down to what you're looking for. You're about to watch one of the oldest horror movies ever made, so if this is just a mild curiosity, and you're just interested in entertainment, Nosferatu might be a really unsatisfying experience. Setting aside that it's a silent film, which may be a hurdle of its own, it's just not very scary. Horror was still in its infancy. Take a look here. This is what it was like leading up to this movie. Movies were framed similarly to a stage production. This was purely theater. They didn't use our modern techniques of frightening the audience. Nosferatu isn't an effectively scary movie, but it has an extremely bold vision. It has atmosphere. It has personality. So if you're somebody that has an interest in the history of cinema, there is a lot to appreciate here. It's more educational than entertaining. There is so much history in this movie, with the themes of immigration, tainted bloodlines, and general anti-Semitism. It's understandable that this might turn a lot of people away, but through this subtext, this movie taps into very real fears of the time. The Great Influenza Outbreak of 1918, one of the deadliest outbreaks in history, and Nosferatu is the harbinger of disease, the plague of the Black Death. When it comes to a period of widespread disease, the fear of outsiders is always at its strongest, and racial tensions always start to rise. Dracula has mirrored themes, with the same fears of immigration and the tainting of pure, clean blood. The difference is, Dracula is sexy, seductive. You could even consider him hypnotic. Nosferatu is not sexy, at least not in the traditional sense. He isn't a silver-tongued charmer. He has no charisma. He's a gross plague monster. And honestly, for these reasons, I gravitate towards Nosferatu as a character. I like the actual horror he represents. But as a movie, it takes the strongest highlights from the novel and tosses aside most of the rest, telling its own condensed, well-rounded story. We still have other elements and characters from Bram Stoker's vision, but it's all been heavily reduced and slightly altered. And really, at the end of the day, that's the biggest case I can make for this movie. Setting aside all of the negativity surrounding it, this is a product of the German Expressionist movement, which was a major positive shift when it comes to culture and the arts. That period of time, shortly after the Great War, when Germany had banned all foreign films and focused solely on independent cinema. Filmmaking there became more focused on surrealism and exaggerated emotion over traditional Hollywood methods. And just like with other famous films from this time, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Metropolis, Nosferatu is a movie worth celebrating. It deserves recognition for pushing the boundaries on the art medium, not just for horror, but for filmmaking in general. So, with all that being said, I guess, yeah, I recommend Nosferatu.